8:35 a.m., June 10th, 1990. An unimaginable threat appeared in the skies over England. Flight 5390 was plummeting rapidly through Heathrow's airspace, one of the busiest zones filled with countless international flights. A mid-air collision could happen at any moment. But something even more terrifying had already occurred. Captain Timothy Lancaster had been sucked out of the cockpit and was now lying motionless on the aircraft's roof. A sudden drop in cabin pressure caused oxygen levels to plunge to dangerous lows. The lives of 87 people now hung by a thread, and no one could have imagined that the fate of the entire flight would rest in the hands of passengers, most of whom had no aviation knowledge whatsoever. So, how would they save the flight? Would a disaster unfold and become one of the most horrifying aviation accidents in history? You won't have to wait long to find out. Fasten your seatbelt and join today's flight. British Airways 5390.
At 6:30 a.m. at Birmingham Airport, the British Airways crew was fully prepared for the 1,500-kilometer journey to Malaga, Spain. The captain, Timothy Lancaster, 42, was a veteran pilot with over 21 years of experience and 11,050 flight hours. The first officer, Alistair Aitchison, 39, had 7,500 flight hours and had just joined the crew. There were also 4 flight attendants and 81 passengers on board, all eagerly looking forward to arriving at this beautiful coastal city. Before takeoff, Aitchison walked around the plane, while Captain Lancaster reviewed the maintenance log. Everything seemed normal. At 8:20 a.m., the plane was cleared for takeoff. Lancaster announced over the intercom in a casual tone,
"This is Captain Lancaster. Welcome aboard today's flight. Wishing you a relaxing and safe journey."
8:22 a.m., the plane has been switched to autopilot. 8:33 a.m., the plane has reached 17,300 feet, 5,300 meters. Everything is going smoothly. The pilots begin to relax and unbuckle their seatbelts. Captain Lancaster loosens his seatbelt and looks out the window, watching the sun shine down on the town of Didcot in Oxfordshire. Suddenly, Lancaster senses something strange. He turns to the co-pilot and asks, "Hey, Aitchison, did you turn down the temperature in the cabin?" Aitchison takes a sip of tea, immediately replying, "I feel the wind too, but I didn't touch the temperature control button." Lancaster begins to doubt his own senses. Then the windshield began to shake, and small cracks appeared on the glass. Before he could process what was happening, a nightmare immediately came. First Officer Nigel Ogden had just opened the cockpit door to bring food to the crew when a loud bang was heard. Fog filled the cockpit. The windshield was blown away. Captain Lancaster was immediately sucked out by the sudden drop in pressure. Ogden quickly grabbed Lancaster's legs. The fierce wind slammed Lancaster's body against the top of the plane, his head and arms hitting the fuselage, which was subjected to 600 kilometers per hour winds and an outside temperature of nearly minus 17 degrees Celsius. At that moment, the plane began to shake violently. The autopilot was disengaged. The plane began to descend rapidly. The cockpit door opened and landed on the throttle control, causing the plane to accelerate dangerously. Debris from the cabin was sucked into the cockpit. Flight manuals were flying everywhere. Passengers were screaming in panic. Flight attendants tried to calm them down and instructed everyone to prepare for an emergency landing. The situation was dire. BA5390 did not have enough emergency oxygen for the passengers. If they could not land within 30 minutes, everyone on board could die from lack of oxygen. First Officer Aitchison took control. Although unfamiliar with BA5390, he tried to stay calm. He managed to restore the autopilot and signaled ATC.
"This is Flight 5390, requesting immediate emergency assistance. We've had a structural failure. Requesting immediate landing."
But the howling wind was too loud. He couldn't hear air traffic control clearly. Nigel Ogden continued holding on to the captain's legs, despite bleeding and numb hands. Another flight attendant, Simon Rogers, came to assist. Soon after, flight attendants reported that passengers were having difficulty breathing. The entire cabin was consumed by unbearable tension. Acheson faced a life-or-death decision. Should they let go of the captain to seal the gap in the cockpit and ensure the plane's safety? British Airways policy allowed sacrificing one crew member to save the majority, if the passengers agreed. A vote was held. Flight attendant John announced, "We have two options: let go of the captain to seal the breach and stabilize the pressure, or hold on to him and risk the plane exploding." Silence filled the cabin. One hand was raised, then two, then 10, then 40. But then a child's voice pierced the air. A 10-year-old boy cried out,
"Mom, please don't raise your hand. If you do, the captain will die. Dad and baby Mina are still waiting for us."
The voice woke up the people around. The raised hands slowly fell back down. No one could let the captain die. They chose compassion. Outside, the plane was still descending at a rate of 24 meters per second. Without intervention, a crash or mid-air collision would occur. Just when hope seemed lost, a faint radio signal came through, a lifeline from air traffic control. Flight 5390, diverting to Southampton Airport for landing. But Acheson had never landed at Southampton in his career. He was unfamiliar with the airport and its approach systems. Worse still, all the charts and navigation instructions had been blown away. He requested a diversion to Gatwick, an airport he knew well. But ATC replied that Gatwick had no usable runways. The only option was Southampton. Acheson immediately diverted to ATC Southampton. He had another concern. BA5390 could not dump fuel before landing, and runway length was an issue. The plane needed at least 1,800 meters to land safely.
ATC, this is 5390. Please confirm runway length compatibility for BAC1211. We require a minimum of 1,800 meters.
Runway 5 is our longest runway. It meets your requirements. Land there. Acheson breathed a sigh of relief, preparing to land. He also updated ATC on the captain's condition and the damaged windshield. ATC was shocked but immediately deployed emergency response teams. Miraculously, at 8:55 a.m., after 22 minutes of airborne chaos, the plane landed safely. Captain Lancaster survived. Despite a broken arm, broken wrist, and dislocated thumb, he pulled through. All 87 people on board survived. No one died. An investigation into the incident found that the windshield had been replaced just 27 hours earlier. The technician used the wrong bolts. 84 of the 91 were smaller than 0.66 millimeters, which could not withstand the pressure difference in the cabin. This caused the windshield to blow off at high altitude. And here's the chilling truth. If the passengers had voted for the captain to leave, his body would have been sucked into the engine, causing an explosion. Their kindness had inadvertently saved them. Flight 5390 is proof that sometimes just a little compassion can work wonders.